I'm so glad to be here. I think this reading series and this group and the way you guys listen, the quality that you bring and the poems that you bring are just so wonderful to be a part of, and I'm so happy to be here and happy to be reading with Diane and reading with you. So I can't hear what the microphone's doing. Am I at the, yes. All right. So one of the first conversations I had with Diane, which was at the start of a really wonderful friendship for me and an inspiring one, she mentioned a poem of mine that she liked. And and so I wanted to read it, and it's from East Tennessee, where I grew up, and it's actually from my mom's hometown, which is a kind of a busted coal town, former coal town. And it comes out of an experience that I had of being offered a gift and not responding very well to it. And it took me years and years, and I found a way to respond well, I hope, in a poem. So it's called The Boy with the Blueberries. Conceding the city hurt his simple head. He goes home into the blue mountains that secure the horizon and roll on, side to side, touching like a herd. And he becomes cheap labor, timbering, where woods lock darker onto what was town. That over there was the big garden, and so forth. Foundation showing like some lunar rim. Beach slipped from the knife, still smells like fish. The mottled trail betrays the limping stag. Houses close on the road in apparent watchfulness. The clever kids plead to leave, then leave, sometimes come back. Approaching them, he says, failing to despise what will not have him, if you are here tomorrow, I can bring berries. I could find you all the berries you'd want. Thank you, we go today. As though they'd turned after, what, some whistle, snatch of color, and stared and could not find it. He leaves them wanting where they were not wanting. So, thank you. I wish I'd told that boy, yes, I would like you to bring me all the berries I could want, right? But that was the next best thing I could do. So I grew up in the Bible Belt. I grew up in the Methodist church, which is to say I stood beside the Bible Belt and kind of watched it happen because it was essentially Baptist and on. And I have an affection for the Methodist church. And I worked on a project with a Methodist minister from Tennessee who gets into trouble with his congregation a lot because he kind of feels that religion should be obsolete. And I was working on a project with him where he would send me the Methodist liturgy, the readings for each week, and I would write a poem, and he would read it for his congregation, good, bad, or ugly. So this is also a poem set in Tennessee by the river I grew up by, the Clinch River. The Fourth Watch. It's a meditation on Matthew 14:22-33, which I don't remember what that is right now. The Fourth Watch. End of the day, light draining, a bat's torn flight, my daughter as errant, chasing lightning bugs across the lawn. Her hands cup their weightless rise. Below us, the river holds on to sky, repeats, offers up what the sky does, rose and gold beside dark banks. That night I wake and lie awake, the hour anciently called the fourth watch. Everything dear to me I lie separate from, bound in my own small boat. The story of Jesus walking on water comes from the fourth watch. The men out far enough to see what came toward them, untouched by storm and a cry in fear. Every single angel terrifies. My fourth watch carries me past a beloved who can reach and lift the one sinking. Even my daughter's dear face will be lost to me, white drift of her run as the lawn dims. But I am like the stubborn river. These things I hold between dark and dark. Lost Song. I guess it's not lost if it's in my book, but that was my title. I guess before it was in my book, it was a lost song. I don't know. I guess if it comes to me, it's a lost song. Lost Song. If we could blast all pity from love, like clearing the smell of an infection from a room, or like a comfortable woman lax from napping under blankets who slips a spoon of sweet batter to a child in red pajamas. Well, I wish I could talk for my heart like Vallejo does. I wish I could share my heart like bread. But it has not been amiable. It grieves only for me. If I lie awake at night, it fears only for me. I think it has been too faithful, like the suffering face depicted for the Virgin. No, it is an ordinary heart, roosting in me, like a bird singing that forgets it is singing. Oh, you guys are so kind. So I'm going to call on you to kind of be co-editors with me to these next three poems. They're new. I haven't read them. Besides to Diane in the car on 154. And I was a little scared of her driving, so I didn't give it a good... I'm kidding. I love her driving. But anyway, you're the first read, and one of the ways I work on a poem almost always is I have to say it out loud. And at some point I can't say it out loud to myself anymore. So these are three little poems I wrote coming back from a backpacking trip on the Little South Fork of the Salmon River in the Shasta Trinity Wilderness area. And I guess I packed the poems out with me, you could say. So it's good that poems are light, right? Lighter than a Frisbee.
It's a great fishing river, by the way.
Is it?
Oh,
didn't have my line. I was just eating that bad freeze-dried stuff the whole time. Two versions of natural history. By day, I linger at the map. Grizzly Flats, Grizzly Meadow, Grizzly Lake. I think of that line doused out except on the state flag and T-shirt bragging. And I whisper to myself, shame, shame. But by dark, alone in my tent, my night heart fondles the word eradicate. On someone lecturing me that the body is the soul's temple. Like other temples, the body is local, subject to its era's architecture and such tastes. And like all temples, the body will not remain fully true to its God's whims. But unlike these temples, the restless body moves out and on. It will not be fixed on any map, except incognito, like you are here. It takes the soul like a begging bowl to the high lakes, wild with sky, where it tips itself and fills. A forgiveness of time at Little South Fork Lake. You can see I kept editing this all the way in, so I'm not sure what version I'm going to read to you. It's like performance art. It's going to happen. A forgiveness of time at Little South Fork Lake. It's my past that decides what is first, and my future that names what is last. Meantime, I look back, then turn full to face the lake I slept beside and what cradles it. Rock shoot, meadow, pine on pine, all carried on the lake's surface in the perfect faith that stillness is. Yesterday, dusk, for the first time, I watched an osprey strike, lift off and circle with the grasped fish that made swim motions still in the terrifying air. I raised my palms to them to mean, I think, I am each of you when the time comes, and it will. Now I turn my back on the lake, maybe for the last time. Then a ravine intercedes with its slipping rock, erases beginning or end with this step, now this step, this. So, thank you. And since I seemed to myself to be a little preoccupied with time, I wanted to read you an ode I wrote to time. So it's in my book, from my book, Less Obvious Gods, and I began to think of time as one of those less obvious gods. I mean, you just can't quite, right, get it. And also I wrote it in rebellion of my own teaching students for years not to write about abstractions. And I went home and secretly in my closet, I began to write about abstractions, right? Terrible. It's my ode to time. We have called you fleeting, when we in fact are the brief ones. We have said you steal when you could not have been more generous. Our clocks exhaust themselves counting what you offer. Rocks crumble before they are done being your ledgers. From your vantage, our faces' deepening shadows flicker sweetly as violets. The oldest photographs form with us a moving picture. Therefore, we name perfect only that which withstands you. Thus, the bald-eyed statues in the museum staring wildly at rain. Thus, the lines, "But these words I command are immortal." And you, meanwhile, who do not wait for the other shoe to drop, for the phone to ring, have we not saddled you, lightest of bodies, to carry the snagging burden of our longing? Oh, tombstones with little sepia photographs. Lovers burning to surmount you with one good kiss. Oh, physicists who fix you with the 4 straight pins of coordinates and spots of the universe where you are said to run backwards. That old trick of upending the hourglass. If you were less clear-souled, you might be amused. How we miss what you are, most modest of the gods. There is no monument you would let stand. Thank you. And I have just 2 more. One is about the notion of the past tense. I was writing one day in my notebook, and I noticed all those little D's and T's clicking across the paragraph I was writing because I was putting it in the past tense. And so I thought, oh, well, that's one of the less obvious gods, right? Everything's in the past tense as soon as you're talking about it, right? I don't know. Maybe I spend too much time alone. I don't know. I thought it was great, insightful. But so this is my ode to the past tense. Past tense. You bring near, you set next to me what is not. Such as, this morning I got up, fried eggs, walked the dog. I like your light stride across a sentence. I like the shadow you throw, first phase of an eclipse in which objects grow not darker, but richer. Sometimes when I am quiet, alone in my house, I hear you come into the thing I am doing. Where Akhmatova writes, on the copper shoulder of the lyre player, a scarlet bird sits, you are secretly there. It is to you I turn for the kiss in the garden, and not the one who kissed me then. In you, in the last days, her appetite came back. She called for pork chops, a mess of greens. It is with you I bind all my possessions to carry the way of all possessions. She says, when I was a girl, we never had a care. We kept the babies all morning in the morning air in white carriages. Grandfathers on the stoop rocked them. And then, thank you. There's a woman I much admire in my hometown who sells soups at our farmer's market. And, you know, Beethoven said, I read this on my Appalachian calendar recently. I don't know what Beethoven was doing on my Appalachian calendar, but it was a quote by him, and Beethoven said, only the pure in heart can make a good soup. Right? Like if you're not pure in heart, you can make a pot roast. You can make a, I don't know, rack of lamb. But only the pure in heart can make a good soup. And I feel like this woman's soups, I mean, she's just a really wonderful person, and she makes her soups out of the farmer's market, produce, and I feel like some of her goodness and kindness gets into the soup, right? And so I asked her, I did a dangerous thing, and I said, can I watch you all day because I want to write a poem about you? Because you know how that can happen, right? Like then you're there all day and you have this terrible poem, right? And they're sort of, how did the poem turn out? But I worked on the poem, and I was with her, and I watched her, and I called her, and I was really nervous. I said, Stephanie, I'm trying to write the poem about you and your soup, and my cousin Kim and my Aunt Missy and my Uncle Pat keep showing up. And she goes, put them in. Because she's a soup maker, right? You just make the soup out of what's there, right? So this is my last poem, and thank you for the attention and kindness you've brought. It's a long one, though. We're not saying goodbye yet. It's a big pot of soup. It's called Mason Jar Namaste. Kim played the Batman theme song, pinned towels on us for capes, so we could muscle the windy runs of heroes on Aunt Missy's coiled rag rug, then beg Kim to start the record again. Uncle Pat had bird feet tattooed near his chest hair. When he caught me staring, he said, "Them birds are going to the nest." I'm still embarrassed, still staring. I can't see back to us all, Kim, Missy, Pat, without adding in what we are now, shuffling, pain split, face to the wall, as though we were never anything else. The heart preparing to swallow that, the heart is what has to devour what's there. I want whoever makes my soup to be kind. That's why the long lines slip knots every Monday market around Stephanie Burchell and her soup pots bright as the scraped moon. Chipotle black bean with heirloom tomato, cauliflower roasted in cashew cream, tempeh chili with fat tire beer. No animal suffering hides under the taste. It's as close to photosynthesis as you can get. So now I can join Franz Kafka, murmuring to fish in the Berlin aquarium, "Now at last I look at you in peace. I don't eat you anymore." Stephanie holds the market's hungriest line. Salvatore drops his afternoon scowl at the orange stand, bawls across a bowl, "You should get the Nobel Prize for soup." Carlos and Jose from Perez Farm tease, "Fuera, make some real money, cook a little more soup." Stephanie has 2 soup pots, 1 knife, 1 chopping board, 1 sieve, 1 blender, a white truck to take it all to market. What she does would fit in a children's song. 40 quarts of soup to each of 3 markets, Los Osos, Cayucas, Morro Bay. Regulars know to bring mason jars. We wait, a choir of wide-mouthed jars, and hope to be in the lucky 40. Once in my joy at getting soup, I plunked 2 jars too roughly in my market bag, glass shards and weeping broth, and Stephanie, not pausing, slid over 2 more. The line never hurries her ladling. She wipes each jar mouth in a careful circle, then adds the circles of lid and rim. Sometimes soup streaks her pink face. Her ponytail is butter marigold. Her eyes blue amid the earthen produce. When she looks across the soup spoon, tastes, it is not the horizon Ulysses saw, but the most local soils, the most homeward rains. Kale and fennel from Rudy, Jorge's tomatoes, squash she picked at McCall's farm, all lying down together in Turkish bride with red lentils and the hidden light of lemons. I love to carry home the warm jars, to touch their beautiful Christmas windows, love to leave a jar on my neighbor's porch. Soup closes the space between things, can be taken in by the sick, by the chemo-poisoned. Or when Mage needed his whole body to pull in air for his scarred lungs and quit eating to make room for air, we brought soup, and he ate again. I know now the day is soup, each thing belonging because it showed up. A line of words is soup, and what happens between 2 people, soup, or up and down a neighborhood street. But not much larger, you want to know all the names. Soup's answer is so kind and obvious, it seems the questions must have always been easy. Each thing yielding to the other, split open, no more ego, simmered together, each imparting a taste of its original nature. The light in me bows to the light in you. And this, Stephanie says, a ruined soup can be brought back even an hour before the market. First, go outside the kitchen and collect yourself. Zucchini will fix a lot of problems. And lemon juice, cashews, baking soda, even scorching is not fatal. Just don't stir up the scorched part. There you go.